About a dinosaur that just, well, it completely breaks all the rules we thought we knew about giant predators. So forget everything you picture in your head because we're going after the one they call the river monster. Let's dive right in.
So, let me ask you something. If I say largest predatory dinosaur, what's the first name that pops into your head? For pretty much everyone, it's gotta be T-Rex, right? The undisputed king. But what if I told you the real king was a swimmer?
Hey everybody, meet Spinosaurus. This thing wasn't just longer than a T-Rex, we're talking a whopping 17 meters. But its hunting grounds weren't the plains or forests. Nope, it lived in the massive river systems of ancient North Africa. And look, this wasn't just a dinosaur that could swim, it was a dinosaur that was built for the water.
And that simple fact makes it a totally different kind of predator from anything else we've ever found. It really does break the classic mold in almost every single way.
I mean, that's the key thing to get here. Spinosaurus aegyptiacus was a semi-aquatic specialist. It didn't just pop down to the river for a drink, it lived there. It absolutely ruled a world that other big predators couldn't even touch. It carved out a niche that was completely and totally its own.
So how in the world did it do that? Well, its entire body was, and this is no exaggeration, a masterpiece of aquatic engineering. Every single feature was perfectly tweaked for a life in the water.
It's actually incredible when you look at the details. That long snout, it wasn't for crushing bone like a T-Rex. It was more like a giant pair of tweezers, a precision fish trap full of these cone-shaped teeth, perfect for grabbing anything slippery. Its leg bones were super dense, which acted like a diver's weight belt to help it control its buoyancy. And that huge tail? It wasn't skinny and pointed. It was broad and paddle-like a giant motor pushing it through the water. Even that famous sail, which by the way, scientists still argue about, would have made for one heck of an intimidating profile cutting through the surface.
And this is where the scale just becomes mind-boggling. You know, a T-Rex was huge, no doubt, but Spinosaurus was in a totally different league, at least when it came to length. We are talking about an animal longer than a city bus, just patrolling those ancient rivers. Seriously, just take a second and imagine that silhouette gliding past you in some murky water. But you know, to really understand this animal, you have to understand its kingdom, this lost world where water was absolutely everything.
So, let's rewind the clock. We're going way back, about 100 million years, to the late Cretaceous period, and believe me, this was a very, very different Earth.
Its home was basically a giant, sprawling network of what we might call mangrove forests or huge river deltas today. Just think, hot, humid, and wet all the time. This was a world of murky water, tidal flats, and deep river channels. I mean, it was the absolute perfect environment for a giant, fish-eating predator to become king.
Which of course brings us to how it lived. How exactly did the biggest predator of all time make a living by, well, by fishing?
I absolutely love this description from the research because it just paints such a vivid picture. Instead of some rampaging land monster, you need to picture a giant heron. This enormous creature just waiting patiently in the shallows, its head ready to strike, just waiting to snap up any fish that got a little too close. It was an ambush predator for sure, but one that used the water itself as its camouflage.
And that long, narrow jaw we talked about? It was the ultimate tool for this kind of hunting. It let Spinosaurus plunge its snout into the water and snatch prey with incredible speed and precision, while those interlocking teeth made sure that once it grabbed something, there was no escape.
And listen, it wasn't going after little fish. The rivers back then were full of their own giants. We're talking about massive sawfish, coelacanths the size of a small car, and even some pretty nasty freshwater sharks. In this unique aquatic ecosystem, Spinosaurus was the undisputed top dog.
Okay, so it's an incredibly cool dinosaur. We get it. But beyond that, what's the big takeaway here? Why does this river monster actually matter so much to how we see the past?
It matters because it just completely shatters our stereotype of what a top predator is supposed to look like. You know that classic image, a land-based hunter with bone-crushing jaws? Spinosaurus just throws that whole idea right out the window. It's a semi-aquatic hunter with a specialized fish-snaring snout. It took a totally different evolutionary path to get to the top of the food chain. It's even changing how paleontologists look for fossils. Now they know to look in ancient riverbeds, not just on dry land.
At the end of the day, Spinosaurus forces us to just think bigger. It's proof that dinosaurs weren't just stomping around on land. They conquered the water too, evolving into these bizarre, specialized forms that we're only just now starting to piece together. Every new fossil just shows us that the prehistoric world was so much richer and stranger and more complex than we ever gave it credit for.
And that really leaves us with a pretty cool final thought, doesn't it? If a creature like Spinosaurus could exist, something that rewrites everything we thought was possible for a giant predator, well, it just makes you wonder, what other dinosaur rules are just sitting out there, waiting for their next fossil discovery to be completely and totally broken?